such as wood, stone, with newer materials like recycled plastic. What do you consider in your designs when you're actually trying to integrate these two? Thank you.
Well, in all the designs, I tend to always try to pick things that are natural or non-toxic, because so many building materials have a lot of bad chemicals in them. So my first choice is to go with something like wood or stone, knowing that it's natural and it's also durable and sustainable. And but it's not just enough to just use wood. We try to find wood that's been sustainably harvested or wood that's been reclaimed. So sometimes we'll take wood from an old barn that was being torn down, and then we'll clean it up and use it for a floor, for the walls, or whatever. Those are the main considerations. There's a lot of recycled materials out there, but recycled materials aren't really the answer. They're fine for the interim, but in truth, we're recycling things that weren't really meant to be recycled, like plastic and aluminum. It takes a lot of energy to recycle them. So what we need to do is invent new types of plastics that aren't based on oil, but plastics that are based on corn. And now we have products that are more corn and sugar-based plastics that are natural and biodegradable and much healthier and much more sustainable. So those are all the things that kind of go into consideration.
Thank you. South Plantation, do you have a comment or question for Eric? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Josh, and in Florida we have a lot of hurricanes and stuff, so we mostly use concrete, and I'm just asking, is there any type of substitute that we can use instead of like concrete? Thank you.
Well, concrete is concrete's an interesting material because its main ingredient is this stuff called Portland cement. And Portland cement takes a lot of energy to make and a lot of energy to produce, and we have to heat it to 5,000 degrees, and it gives off all this carbon dioxide. And concrete is now responsible for some 10 to 12% of all global warming. It's just for making concrete, and it's really a crazy material to use. And in a place like Florida, it's good for the hurricanes because it's strong, but it also, in a hot place like Florida, the concrete heats up and stays hot, and through the night it keeps the building hot. So it makes a hot place even hotter. There are other things that we can use instead of concrete. We have now engineered panels that are two panels of plywood that are sandwiched together with an insulation in between, and they're really strong. And we can use those in a place like Florida where there's a lot of hurricanes and they're strong enough to use. And we can use them for the walls and the roof and the floors. And their high insulation value is great in a place like Florida. But that's a great question.
Hi, Eric. I also have a question for myself that I'm intrigued about knowing. You mentioned how buildings contribute to so much already of what's happening globally, whether it be global warming or to the environment. And a place here, like I work in New York City, and I have a family, and we're going to probably live in the suburbs one day, and you mentioned that. So what is something that you would suggest to people who drive cars or to work in buildings that's a small scale step? I mean, obviously we can't tear down all the buildings in Manhattan and rebuild them again. But what do? Do you consult with people who actually work in buildings that have been built for quite a while now and is using up all this energy? How do you consult with them of how to start from, let's say, ground zero and build up to more of a sustainable, environmental friendly building? Thank you.
Well, we can't expect people to tear down buildings. In fact, that would be the worst thing to do because it would just create more waste. So what we need to do is we need to fix our existing buildings, and there's lots of ways to do that. Every building has the opportunity to improve its energy efficiency. So what we do is we look at what are they spending money on. If they're spending a lot on electricity, we find ways to lower the electricity load. If they're spending a lot on heating and cooling, we find ways to insulate the building and keep it cool. In a place like New York City, it's pretty interesting because we have all those dark roads and all those dark roofs, and in the summertime in New York it gets really hot because the sidewalks are just baking in that sun, and we call that the heat island effect. So it makes a hot place even hotter. And what we can do to change that is to put light colored roofs, like white or silver roofs on all. Doing that lowers the temperature. In a place like New York, you can lower the temperature by up to 20 degrees and throughout the whole city just by doing that. And in a place like Florida, a white roof would reflect all that heat. It's the same reason you don't wear dark clothes in the summertime, because it's too hot. So those are easy things to do. In fact, those are things that we should all be doing. And if you look at President Obama's stimulus package, he set aside $6 billion for these energy efficiency upgrades. If we were to do enough energy efficiency upgrades, we could completely eliminate our dependency on Saudi Arabian oil. And we could do that just in less than a year. It's pretty easy, just we haven't done it yet.
Thank you. I do find that amazing. I actually haven't heard about painting the roofs different colors. It's extremely hot here in the summer, actually, in the city. And
right.
I find it, it's always disheartening because at night, there are so many buildings that still have their electricity on, and you wonder why. And I think that's a kind of like a campaign that should be going on. But I want to know if you have any questions or comments also for the students right now. You heard that Westmount is building something in Ecuador, and South Plantation themselves are looking at their own classrooms and what they have in their buildings. Do you have any comments or questions for the students yourself? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to look at what's around you and look at everything as a resource. So if you're building a new building, such as the one in Ecuador, you want to look to see if you can collect the rainwater and use that water for something. And if you're going to collect the rainwater, then maybe the roof is going to change shape, so it makes collecting that water easier. And you're going to want to make the building insulated so it stays nice and comfortable on the inside. And how do you do that? Well, we do it through insulation, and we do it by understanding where the sun is. And we know that the sun is always going to rise in the east and it's always going to set in the west. So if we know that, we can kind of turn the building towards the sun and be smarter about it. In an existing building like South Plantation, their classroom, there's simple things that we can do. We can add tinting to the windows to keep the buildings cool if they're too hot. We can add operable windows if they're too warm and let the air in. We can put in fans to help circulate the air that don't use a lot of energy and are cheaper than air conditioning. And we can put in better lighting that's energy efficient, but also brighter, because it's been shown that a bright classroom is a classroom in which students learn better in. So let's brighten up the classroom so that they can see their work and see what they're doing. All those things are, easy to do. It just takes the will of the students in the school to do it.
Thank you, Eric. I want to bring it back to Westmount Charter School for any comments or questions for Eric. Thank you.
Hi, Eric. My name's Nico, and I'm just wondering what your home is like. I'm just wondering if you designed your own home or if you've incorporated stuff from your presentation into your own home, like your ghost load power bar and stuff like that. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, my home's pretty, you'd probably think it's pretty hippie-like. It's, we have power strips on everything to turn on and off all the loads that we don't need electrically. We have compact fluorescent bulbs in all the light fixtures. We have dimmers on all the light switches. We have a programmable thermostat that's smart enough to know when to turn the heat on and off when we're not there. And we have in the toilets, we have ultra low flow toilets and ultra low flow shower heads that don't use hardly any water at all. And we have a big box that collects all the soapy water from one sink and then runs that soapy water and flushes the toilet with soapy water instead of clean water. We've got a lot of these kind of simple things that we've done that are a little weird.
Thanks, Eric. South Plantation, do you have a comment or question? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I was wondering if the alternative materials you use, if they last as long and if they're just as strong. Thank you.
Well, it's a great question, and well, it really depends on the material, but typically, yeah, we try to pick things that are incredibly durable, because we're trying to build buildings to last for 50 to 100 years, and often the cheapest materials are the least durable because they wear out all the time. So we're trying to use materials that are both affordable but also that last a long time. One way that we do it is we use natural materials that don't need painting all the time. Materials like stone, you wouldn't want to paint stone, or materials like wood, and instead of painting the wood, we just stain it naturally, so it brings out the beauty of the wood. But there's a lot of green materials that don't last as long because they haven't been around as long, but we're